All right, happy Sabbath. Today is October 28, 2017. And we will still continue to study our lines. Specifically, this is going to be the line of Moses and how he was chosen to be the shepherd of the Israelites, taking the children of Israel out of bondage, out of darkness of Egypt, and go back to the promised land that was given in promise already to Abraham, right? It was a covenant already made to Abraham. Okay. All right, we'll go back to where we ended up. We ended last time, actually 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago. All right, let's make a little bit of a summary here. The children of Israel was the seed that was promised to Abram. And that seed was entreated by Ishmael for how many years? You got two choices, 400 or 430. Which one is it? How many years was the seed of Abraham entreated by Ishmael? 400 years. Oh, wow. Very good. Yeah. And the covenant that was made with Abraham that the seed will return to Canaan and dwell in the house of the Lord, right? That seed was who? It was Jesus. But Moses was a type of Jesus. So Moses is the seed, right? And Moses is the shepherd. Did Moses lead the flock of Israel out of Egypt? Yes, right. Yeah, so where was it that they were in the green pastures? Right? Well, while Egypt was suffering, where were they? They were in Goshen, right? They were eating grass in Goshen. They were being nourished in Goshen, right? They were eating grass, green grass in the green pastures, right? Then they had to undergo the first 3 plagues, but after the 3rd plague, from the 4th plague on, it did not hit Goshen. Remember, right? Yeah. So that's a lesson for us, because we are going to go through our wilderness time. We are going to have to go through the spiritual plagues, and we have to make sure that we are already in Goshen by the time the 4th plague hits us. All right? Okay. All right. Okay. Now, so they left Egypt, and according to Ellen White, that was a fulfillment of prophecy that was given to Abraham, that his children is going to return to Canaan. You know, on that day, on that same day when they left Ramses, when they left Egypt, and they went out with a strong hand, right? That was a fulfillment of prophecy. All right, and the first place that they went to was what? What was the first place that they went to? It's not the Red Sea, right? The first place that they went to, and it's called Sukkoth. It actually means, what does the Sukkoth mean? Sukkoth. No, it means booths. It actually means tent or booths, right? They first went to Sukkoth. And in Sukkoth, God told Moses to consecrate the firstborn to the Lord. Why? God had just killed all the firstborn that was not consecrated to God in Egypt. So now all the firstborn had to be consecrated to the Lord, right? And they were also taught about the feast of the unleavened bread on their first day that they came out of Egypt. Why did they have to remember remember this food that you are eating now as you come out of Egypt? You're eating unleavened bread. Why is it that they were eating unleavened bread? Because they were in a hurry. They don't have time for that bread to rise, right? So when they make bread, don't make any bread that's going to rise. It's going to take time. You just take flat bread without any leaven, without any yeast in it, so you can eat crackers, right? Yeah, that's unleavened bread. So they just ate crackers going into the wilderness, right? Yeah. So that's the feast of unleavened bread. No leaven, because leaven is yeast. And what does yeast represent also? Sin. Yeast represents sin. So after they went in to Sukkoth, they went to the border of the wilderness called Etham. And how were they led there? At night with a pillar of fire. And the day with a pillar of a cloud, right? So that represents what? The pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud represents what? The presence of God. Okay, so they were led from the edge of the wilderness, Etham. Where did they end up in? Then they ended up with the cloud and the pillar of fire. They ended up at the Red Sea, right? Okay. And what does the Red Sea represent for the Israelites? What does it represent for them? What happens in the still waters? The sheep was washed, right? That lines up with Jesus being baptized. Was the Israelite baptized in the Red Sea? Yes. In James, right? It says that the Israelites, they were baptized in the cloud and in the sea. They were baptized in the Red Sea, right? They were baptized in the Red Sea. And when they came out of the Red Sea, they went into the wilderness of Shur for 3 days. And then they came to a place, because the first thing they did that happened to them when they came out, they brought some water and they brought some crackers. What do you think they're going to run out of in the middle of the desert when it's so hot? They're going to run out of water. So the first thing they did was what? What did they do when they run out of water? They complained, they grumbled, murmured and grumbled. But there's no more water. Oh boy. Because what? Then they came to a place called Mara. Because they said, we can't drink this water. The water is what? What does Mara mean? Bitter. It's bitter. It's bitter. It's bitter water. We can't drink this bitter water. So what did Moses do? What did he do? He took a piece of a tree. And he threw that tree into the water. And what happened to the water? It turned sweet. And what does that tree represent? It represents Jesus, right? Jesus is going to turn the bitter water into sweet water, right? That represents Jesus. From there, okay, I have to look at my notes. From there, where did they go? Oh, wait a minute. Right at that place, this is very important. Right at that place, God gave them a statue. And what statue was it that God gave them? He said, you have to obey my laws. Because if you don't obey my laws, what are you going to get? You're going to get the diseases of Egypt. Now, this is very important. God is going to tell them that I'm going to teach you a health reformation, but the steps of a health reformation, I have to establish the law first. This is the law. If you don't obey the natural law, right? If you eat the food of Egypt, right? Even if you don't believe me, what's going to happen? You're going to get sick naturally. If you're going to eat Egyptian food, you're going to get sick, right? And you're going to die the diseases of Egypt. So what kind of diseases that they die? What do we call that? What kind of diseases is it? It's the lifestyle diseases, right? Right? We know the lifestyle diseases, right? Yeah. You're going to die the lifestyle diseases of Egypt. if you don't follow the natural law that I'm giving to you. Okay? Right? After that, they went to Elim. And at Elim, they had 70 palm trees, and they had water. Right? That's it. I put the palm tree right there, because that's Elim. And the palm trees, that is also a symbol of them having booths also, which is Sukkot. So they lived in the wilderness in booths of palm trees, which is celebrated by the Feast of Tabernacles. All right. Okay. All right. So that's where we were. So that's the still waters. The waters of the Red Sea, the waters of Marah, and the waters of Elim. Okay? I represent by the still waters right there. Okay. What happens after the still waters? What's the next step? There's restoration. This is actually very important. The story of the Israelites is actually the story of the everlasting gospel. Because right after the still waters of the Red Sea, of Marah and Elim, you're going to have restoration. Okay, what was being restored to them afterwards? Where did they come to next? Where did they come to next? All right, we read in Exodus 16, verse 1 to 5. And they took their journey from Elim, right? Elim is the place of the 70 palm trees and the water. And all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin. Right? They came to Sin. Remember, it's going to be a restoration. It has to be a restoration. Right? Because our model will not work if there's not a restoration here. Which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Let's see. They have been walking out of Egypt with water and crackers, and they ran out of water. So now God gave them water. So what's the next thing that they're going to run out of? They run out of crackers. They run out of water, food. So what do they do when they run out of things? They murmur again. We're out of water. So we murmur. They get water. Now we're out of food. And they murmur again. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots of Egypt, and we did eat bread to the full. Oh boy, we used to be so full of bread and so full with meat. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Oh, we're so hungry. We're out of the bread. We're out of unleavened bread. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread for heaven. You want bread? I'll give you bread. I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you. All right? And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in. It shall be twice as much as they gather daily. All right? So what was being restored here? What was the restoration? The Sabbath, right? The Sabbath was being restored. Yeah, the Sabbath, you know. Were they being restored physically with the Sabbath? Yeah, they were given. What were they given then? They were given manna also, right? All right. So they were given a restoration of their physical needs, but they were also given a restoration of their spiritual need. What is their spiritual need? Rest. Rest on Sabbath. That's there. So was God restoring their body and their soul? Yes. They were given manna and they were given the Sabbath. A rest for they were given food for their physical need, and they were given Sabbath for their spiritual need. Right?
They didn't realize and remember that they were slaves in Egypt.
Yeah.
And they didn't even follow the Sabbath.
Yeah, they forgot it. That's why they had to remember. But remember, God had given to all their forefathers the 10 Commandments verbally. It was not written down. It was given to them verbally. But they forgot it when they were in Egypt. Okay, what else did he give? And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning the dew lay around about the host. So when God gave them food, which is manna, what did he also give them? Quail. Why? You know, do you think that their stomachs is used to eating manna? They've always eat flesh pots. So is God merciful to them? Your stomach's not gonna, you have to be weaned off of that stuff, right? Yeah. So he gave them. It's okay. You know what? You didn't know about it, so now you can still have some of that quail. Quail is the flesh pots. You can have quail at this time, but you know what? I'm gonna give you quail, and I'm gonna give you manna. So he gave them both.
But why did he give them both? Because they were wondering.
This is the restoration plan is like this. God is merciful, right? He is merciful. He knows you're not going to be able to wean yourself immediately. There's no such a way. You can't just suddenly become manna eaters when all your life you've been eating flesh pot and bread, right? You're going to have to be weaned off it, okay? But remember, he already made the law. Here you go. If you continue to eat the food of Egypt, you're going to die the diseases of Egypt, right? So that's the rule. He established the rule first. You remember, this is the rule, okay? This is the natural law.
Health reform.
Right. He was giving them health reform. So health reform is what? Is it immediate right away?
No,
It's progressive.
Yeah.
So he's going to wean you off of this quail first. Right? So he said, it's okay, you can have quail. You don't have to eat manna right away, you can have quail. All right.
But didn't they end up getting sick after eating the quail?
You're getting ahead of us. All right. You remember the story, right? You remember the story. All right. So we read Exodus 16, verse 14 and 15. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, small as a hoar frost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna. For they wist not what it was. So manna means, what is it? What is it? Manna. Oh, okay, let's call it manna. What is that? And Moses said unto them, this is the bread. You want bread? God gives you bread, which the Lord has given you to eat. But remember, God also gave them quail. All right? So what was it about manna was the object lesson. Continue on verse 25 to 30. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days shall ye gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass there went out some of the people on the 7th day to gather, and they found none. Oh boy. Can you be working to gather food on the Sabbath? And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. There's going to be a doubling on a Friday. Right. Because you're going to have to rest on the 7th day. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man get out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the Seventh day. All right. Okay. And you know what? At that time, in Exodus, if you read verses 32 and 33, and Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord commandeth. Fill an omer to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness." You know, fill a little bowl here of that manna, and we will preserve that manna. And eventually, where did they preserve it? And Moses take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein and laid it up before the Lord to be kept for generations. Eventually, where was that pot of manna preserved in? In the most holy place. They kept that. Wherever they went, they brought that pot of manna in the most holy place. That was a remembrance. Every time they went somewhere, they had to remember it. When they were in the palm trees and the water, they remembered with booths, palm booths. They also had to remember the feast of the unleavened bread. Here, they had to remember the manna. How did they remember the manna? They kept it in a pot, and eventually they put it in the most holy place, right? They had to remember all of these things. They had to remember, right? Okay.
Isn't there a sig-
Hmm?
isn't there a significance to that?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Obviously, there is significance to that, you know. But it's a remembrance. They always have to remember it. They always have to remember that there's the reason. Now, remember, what did they do? You know, Andre, you already alluded to what they eventually did. But let's read what Ellen White says. God was not unmindful of the wants of Israel. He said to the leader, "I will rain bread from heaven for you." And directions were given that the people gather a daily supply with a double amount on the sixth day, that the sacred observance of the Sabbath might be maintained. So he was bringing to them the remembrance of the Sabbath day because they had forgotten it in Egypt. All right, this is from HFM, the Health Food Ministry. By painstaking effort, they can be taught to discriminate between a proper healthful diet and the use of flesh meats. No encouragement should be given in the training of our youth to prepare dishes which are composed in any, look at Ellen White is very clear, in any degree of flesh meats. Oh boy. For this is pointing to the darkness and ignorance of Egypt, rather than to the purity of health reform. You know, she's very clear, any degree. Teach the students to prepare healthful drinks from grains suitably prepared to take the place of tea, right? Okay, you got to give up tea also. This drink is unhealthful in its purest preparation, and it is so adulterated, mixed with other ingredients that resemble tea, that it become a dangerous beverage. The question has been asked me, have you any light for us? If so, give it to us. From time to time, many things have been opened before me, and often light has come just before difficulties have arisen. So you're going to be given the light of the health reform. But remember, right after that, there's going to be difficulties, right? You're going to be tested. There's going to be a testing afterwards, right? Yeah.
It says, teach the students to prepare healthful drinks from grains suitably prepared to take the place of tea. Are we talking like caffeinated tea?
Yeah, it's got to be tea because tea has caffeine in it, yes.
We're not talking about stuff like peppermint tea and
No.
stuff like that.
No, this is tea that is the tea of, this is the tea from India that they were drinking, you know, and that's caffeinated tea, right? Okay. But this is, if you're still eating meat, you're in the darkness and ignorance of Egypt, right? That is, if you already know. If you don't know, you're not in the darkness because you don't know the law, right? Yeah.
I would say still in the darkness, but you don't aware of
You're
it.
just not aware.
Yeah.
You're in the
Once
darkness.
You're right.
you're in darkness.
Thank you, thank you. That's very good. You're in darkness, but you don't know that you're in darkness. Yeah, you're so your mind is. You can see things that you're in the dark, but then you're given the light. You're blinded by the light, right? But you don't realize you're in the darkness. The self-denial, humility, and temperance required of the righteous, whom God especially leads and blesses, is to be presented to the people in contrast to the extravagant, health-destroying habits of those who live in this degenerate age. God has shown that health reform is as closely connected with third angel's message as is the hand is with the body. You know what? I actually cut out a couple of sentences here, and I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna read it. All right? Okay, I'm gonna read this. This is just so it'll fit here, but I'm gonna read the middle part here that I cut out. There is nowhere to be found so great a cause of physical and moral degeneracy as the neglect of this important subject. Those who indulge appetite and passion and close their eyes to the light of fear, they will see sinful indulgences which they are unwilling to forsake, are guilty before God. Oh boy. They're guilty before God. Whoever turns from the light in one instance hardens his heart to disregard the light upon other matters. Whoever violates moral obligations in the matter of eating and dressing prepares the way to violate the claims of God in regard to eternal interests. Right, wow. Our bodies belong to Him who made them, and we are in duty bound to become intelligent regarding to the best means of preserving them from decay. If we enfeeble the body by self-gratification, by indulging the appetite, and by dressing in accordance with healthful, destroying fashions in order to be harmony with the world, we become the enemies of God. So this is talking about the humility in dress and temperance, which is appetite. And she ties this with health reformation. And remember, the children of Israel is undergoing their health reformation. So we're going to learn how the Lord teaches them health reformation, right in that part of the part of the everlasting gospel. That's reformation. He's teaching health reformation right there. All right. It was at the house of Brother Hilliard in Otsego, Michigan, June 6, 1863. That the great subject of health reform was opened before me in vision. 1863, the health reformation started, okay? Right? So we think health reformation is in the future. Sorry. The health reformation is way back there, all right? In 1863. You're in darkness. You're still in the bondage of Egypt. The great subject of health reform was in the vision in 1863. The Lord presented a general plan before me. I was shown that God would give to His commandment-keeping people a reformed diet. He is going to give a reformed diet. And that as they receive this, their disease and suffering would be greatly lessened. You're not going to suffer the diseases of Egypt. I was shown that this work would progress. It's a progressive work. You can't suddenly, boom, become vegan. You can't. You have to be. It's a progressive thing, you know. All right? Okay. Let's see. All right, but what happened to those to the people? What happened to the people? They became weary of the food prepared for them by angels. Oh boy. They got weary of manna and sent to them from heaven. They knew it was just the food God wished them to have, and that it was healthful for them and their children. They knew it. But they got tired of it. Notwithstanding their hardships in the wilderness, there was not a feeble one in all their tribes. Oh, wow. There's not even one feeble person. All of them could walk, right, in the wilderness. And remember, when we were out there in that wilderness, oh my, do you think we could walk like that?
No.
There is no way.
No way.
And I also read from Ellen White, from the Spirit Chronology, that even their clothes and their footwear
It's just impossible.
preserved.
Even for us, it is impossible to walk in that place. All right? Satan, the author of disease and misery, will approach God's people where he can have the greatest success. He has controlled the appetite in a great measure from the time of his successful experiment with Eve, in leading her to eat the forbidden fruit. He came with his temptations first to the mixed multitude, the believing Egyptians, and stirred them up to seditious murmurings. They would not be content with the healthful food which God has provided for them. Their depraved appetites craved a greater variety, especially flesh meats. So this was, when did this happen? Okay, right? They were in the wilderness. Remember, they were at Marah. God gave them, okay, here's the law, all right? You obey this law, you're going to be fine. You're not going to get the diseases. And then he says, okay, I'm going to give you the right food to eat. But I'm going to still let you eat and wean yourself off of that quail, the flesh food of Egypt, all right? You're going to be able to wean yourself. But here's the healthful food. But the people, they don't want it. That's later. Okay, then after that, what happened? They went to the wilderness of Sinai, and then they received the 10 Commandments, and then they built the tabernacle, all right? And then after that, they started murmuring again. This is the story when they start murmuring again, okay? And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. And remember, this is afterwards. They were given the 10 Commandments. They built the tabernacle. They already held, God was saying, okay, wean yourself off this quail. Eat this manna, all right? It's okay. When you were in that part of the health reformation, in the beginning of health reformation, it's okay. You can wean yourself off of this stuff, right? But when you learn more and more and more, okay. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish, which we did eat in Egypt freely. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. And all those spices that we used to cook the fish in and the flesh. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quails from the sea and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and were a day's journey on the other side around about the camp. Wow, they walk for a whole day and all they can see is quail. And as it were 2 cubits high. A cubit is this much, so 2 cubits is up to their thighs in quail. For one day walking. That's a whole lot of quail.
That's a whole lot of people.
Who's going to resist?
All right? And the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 omers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, even before the flesh was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattava, because there they buried the people that lusted.
Wow.
Eat to their death.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, there is an object lesson to this. What is the object lesson? If you've been given the health reform, and then you still don't follow the health reform, knowing the natural law of God is the law of God, right? God wants you to eat healthful food. And he says, if you eat healthful food, you're not going to die the diseases of Egypt. That's the law of God, right? But if you break that law, what's going to happen to you? The wages of sin is death. So was eating quail a sin here?
Yes.
Yes.
Whereas initially he was merciful. He said, I am getting you away from
Ah,
this. Just accept what I'm giving to you.
right,
Continue to resist it.
right. See, do you see health reform?
Yes.
If you've been given health reform and you still don't obey it, you already understand it, you know all the law, you're going to have to suffer. You're going to die because it's a sin. So is it a sin to eat quail here? It is a sin. Because what is the wages of sin? They die. So it was a sin. So after a health reformation and you still eat flesh, you sin.
The common sense also, Rob. I'm given a manna, which is clean, I don't. Versus a quail, you have to kill, there's blood, you have to pluck it. I mean, it's so dirty.
Right.
Why would you choose that? And you're in a desert, you don't have a lot of water. You know,
Blindness.
it's just like, oh.
Right. Yeah. This is quite amazing, you know, because we just don't like to see that, you know. Just by reading, by following this story, we can tell that once the Reformation, the health reformation has begun, and you are to understand it and know it and keep it, and you don't follow it, you are sinning against God. That is, if you know it, right? Yeah.
So I said, many are not going to the Lord because they don't know, because they don't make use of what they could know.
Yeah.
Where their provisions are made for them to know, and they don't come to the meeting, they don't listen, they don't read. So that is why they lost, not because they don't know. Because every one of them can know today. We have the internet, we can read the book, we can say, oh, I can't buy it. It's obvious. Everyone can know it today. So ignorance is no excuse for sinning.
That's right. Yeah. That some people are truly ignorant, you know. In the beginning of the health reformation, they were still ignorant. And God winked at them. It's okay, you can eat some quail, right? But afterwards, if you already know, he's not going to wink at them anymore, right? Yeah. Because at that time, when they were coming out of Egypt, all their crackers are gone. Quail is now considered what? Emergency food. Yeah, at that time, you know, the quail came out first, and then they had the manna. So quail is considered emergency food. You know, when Noah came out of the ark, meat was what? Emergency food. But when it's no longer emergency food, and after the Reformation, it's a sin. You know, you have to be bold and say it's a sin, because this is what it's teaching, right? If you die eating quail, means what? You sinned. Now my question is, was there any quail-eating Hebrews that entered Canaan? So what is that teaching us?
You're not going to make it.
You're not going to go to heaven in these days.
Isn't it in early
The time
writings
of
or something
judgment
like that?
while eating
If you're
flesh.
eating flesh, well, you're not going to make it. No,
So from
no
there
one
on out,
eating flesh.
There's no quail anymore.
eat any.
All they ate is manna and drink water. That's all they ate. They're in the desert. There's nothing to eat. All they ate was manna. There's no quail-eating Hebrews in Canaan.
And then you have to remember, they were a new generation. Because all women died, even Moses died,
Yeah, pretty.
Except two.
Yeah, this is pretty sobering, pretty sobering. Okay, so what was the restoration here? The restoration is the Sabbath and the health reform, right? Restoration. When we do this, it's so amazing, huh?
Yeah.
How could the children walking in the desert lines up with Psalms 23? It's amazing. It lines up so perfectly. All right. Yeah. Okay, now, remember, Ellen White said there's going to be difficulties that come after knowledge is given. So the next thing is going to be the valley of the shadow of death. And that is going to be difficult times. It's not going to be all green pastures and still waters and restoration. That's nice. But what? It always has to be followed by difficulties, right? So it's the next step. You know what we're going to see? Is the next step a difficulty time for the Hebrews? It has to be. Otherwise, this doesn't work, right? And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of sin. See, remember? They were given reformation there, right? And after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim. Okay, what's in Rephidim now? Rephidim, there's no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the Lord did chide with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. Oh, they run out of water again. And Moses said unto them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water. And the people murmured against Moses and said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt, to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. Oh boy. They're going to stone Moses. And the Lord said unto Moses, go on before the people and take with thee the elders of Israel and thy rod. Okay. There's a rod, and there's going to be, at this point in Rephidim, there's going to be a rod all the time. Wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb. Okay, Horeb means a desolate, parched, dry, waste, destruction, and solitude. Horeb. And thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come out of water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, because they tempted the Lord. So Massa, I think Massa means chiding, and Meribah means tempted. Okay, you gotta, you can double check me about that. But Rephidim means the place of rest, a railing at the bottom of the bed, a place of rest. All right, and I guess the valley of the shadow of death. A rest is sleeping. Death is sleep also. All right, so Rephidim. Okay, so here, how did they respond to trials and temptations? They did not believe that God has led them. Through all these things that He have shown them, they still show their unbelief. Through what God has, led them through. All these, the 10 plagues, Red Sea, they still blame God that God was not with them, right? Instead, they should have, they said, well, you know what? If God has led us before, we come to a trial, how's our response going to be? God is going to lead us again. If we see trials, what our response should be? God always led us before. He's going to lead us again. But what do? We always behave like the we always behave like the Israelites. Every time we get trials and temptation, we whine and murmur, right? Meaning we don't trust God yet, right? Instead, when we have trials and temptations, we should say, you know what? God led us before. He's going to lead us again, right? Yeah. By the command of God, the children of Israel were brought to Rephidim, a place destitute of water. He who was enshrouded in the pillar of cloud was leading them, and it was his express command that they were encamped in this place. He designed that they go through a Rephidim experience. God knew the lack of water at Rephidim, and he's brought his people hither to test their faith. You know what? I'm going to give you all this knowledge. I'm going to give you green grass. I'm going to give you still waters. I'm going to give you reformation. But after that, you're going to have to be tested at Rephidim. But how poorly they proved themselves to be a people whom he would trust. Many today think that when they begin their Christian life, they will find freedom from all want and difficulty. Oh boy. But everyone who takes up his cross to follow Christ comes to a Rephidim in his experience. You know, it's not all about the bread and the fishes, you know, that God will feed you with the 5,000, you know. It's people follow him for the bread and the fishes. Life is not all made up of green pastures and cooling streams. There you go. Ellen White said, it's not about green pastures and cooling streams. Disappointment overtakes us. Privations come. Circumstances occur which bring us into difficult places. As we follow in the narrow way, doing our best as we think, we find that grievous trials. All these things is Rephidim. We think that we must have walked by our own wisdom far away from God. Conscience-stricken, we reason, if we had walked with God, we would never have suffered so. Oh boy. Then we don't know. We don't know the plan of God. The plan of God is that we're going to have to suffer. Why? Because that is what strengthens us. Do you think our faith is strengthened when we get everything that we want? In the green pastures and the cooling streams, are we going to be strengthened at that time? We can't be strengthened then. We have to be strengthened in Rephidim. And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken afar, after. But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house are we? If we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end. Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost said, today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. When if you don't believe, is when you forget that God has led you in the Red Sea. During the 10 plagues, you forget all of that. And now you murmur at Rephidim. You forget. It's an evil heart of unbelief. By exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. You're going to be hardened. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. How is our character perfected? By believing that God will lead us into trials to perfect our character. Right? We believe we are going to be led into temptations and trials, because that is only the way that we are going to perfect our character. By faith, through the denial of self, humility, and through temperance. All right? Okay. So what happened at Rephidim? Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Right? The Amalekites came and fought. This is Rephidim. Right? They have to fight their enemies. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. Is there a rod of God in Rephidim? Yes. In the valley of the shadow of death, thy rod and thy staff, it will comfort me. In Rephidim there is always a rod. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur. So this is Moses. You know, Aaron should be older. I don't know why he looks younger here, but this probably is Aaron. I don't know why. I was looking. Aaron is 3 years older, and this may be Hur anyway. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand. All right, when he held up his hand, what happened? Yeah, Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy. And they took a stone and put it under him. So they said, okay, Moses, sit on a stone. And put it under him. And he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands. See? Aaron and Hur held up his hands. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. You're going to have to fight your enemies until the sun goes down. Right?
What's this?
Yeah. What does that mean? What does this mean?
It's very literal.
It's actually literal.
Very literal.
It's literal. Right. What happens at Rephidim to Jesus?
Oh, that makes sense.
Wow, it's pretty literal, right?
That's literal.
Yeah.
But even also the cross, the grants that when the people had sinned also, when they looked up to
Yeah.
they lived.
That's left. And when Jesus was lifted up as the serpent, the serpent was lifted up. Yeah. That was at the cross. The Rephidim is.
I never heard that story growing up.
Yeah, this story is pretty. That's Rephidim, right? The Amalekites, right? The Amalekites, and this is why the Amalekites are the ones that were. God will always said, "I'm gonna destroy these Amalekites." And when did the Amalekites get destroyed? Okay, you should remember this, right? You remember when were the Amalekites eventually? God said, the Amalekites. These people were the first ones that confronted you in the desert. They will have to be destroyed. When was it? At the time of Saul. Right. The time of Saul. Right. Yeah. And what was the name of the king? What's the name of the king? I kind of forgot it now. I'm hoping you guys will remember. The Amalekite that Saul was supposed to kill and he didn't kill. What's the name of that king? I forgot the king. What's the name of that king? Yes, in 1 Samuel, or 2 Samuel, right? Agag, right? And who is the descendant of Agag? Haman. Right. If Saul had killed Agag, there would have been no Haman. But Saul did not do his job.
Wait, I thought Samuel killed him. Well, not Samuel.
Right. But he didn't kill everybody. He did kill Agag, but then the family was, if Saul had killed everybody.
He spared.
He destroyed the city, but he did not kill.
Yeah, but eventually Samuel. But Agag, the descendant of Agag is actually Haman. If Saul had ended all the Amalekites, there would not have been any Haman.
Wow.
But anyway, all right. So we'll see. Do we see the rod in the valley of the shadow of death? That's Jesus being lifted up, and his hands were on the cross. And that's how Peter was told he was going to end his, his life is going to end with his hands going to be, stretched out, right? And whose hand was stretched out also here? It was Moses' hand was stretched out with a rod in his hand, right? Moses was lifted up, holding a rod, just like Jesus, right? Jesus died on the cross in the valley of the shadow of death in Rephidim, right? It's pretty amazing. You study the story of the Israelites walking through the desert, and you realize it's all according to this pattern. It's pretty amazing. You know what? Yeah. And that is a more sure word of prophecy.
So you don't have it doesn't continue beyond?
Oh yeah, we're going to continue it.
Oh.